Hi guys, in this video I have a question on transformations of trigonometric graphs and two solutions to it. So I'm going to walk you through each one of these two solutions, then I give you the one which I think is the best to consider for similar questions. And with that being said, let's start off by understanding the question that we have. So the question says, the curve y equals sine x is transformed to the curve y equals 4 sine half x minus 30 degrees. And it goes on to say, describe fully a sequence of transformations that have been combined, making clear the order in which the transformations are applied. Right? So let's start with solution 1. Right? It says, there's a stretch in the x-axis by a factor 2, right? And we're getting that from here, right? It's half x, right? So the factor is always 1 over the coefficient of x, like this, and this gives us 2, right? That's why for solution 1, it says the stretch in the x direction, in the x-axis rather, by a factor of 2, right? Then for the second part, it says the horizontal translation by 30 degrees to the right, coming from this part, it's minus 30 degrees. So for transformations in the x-axis, if there is a minus, we know we're moving to the right, right? And if it's a plus, we know we're moving to the left. So that's why solution 1 is saying horizontal translation by 30 degrees to the right. Then lastly, stretch in the y-axis by a factor of 4. We're getting it from this right here, right? And I kind of get it. This person who came up with solution 1 probably started with the transformation that is closest to x, right, which is the stretch from what we can see, right, just by looking at the question, which is the half x, and they say it's a stretch, and followed by the translation, and lastly the stretch, right? But let's now look at solution 2. It says there is a translation in the x-axis with a factor of 60 first, right? Then a stretch in the x-axis by a factor 2. Then lastly a stretch of factor 4 in the y-axis, right? So let me try and explain the difference between these two solutions, right? You can see that for the stretch in the x-axis, we have the same factor, right? It's 2 for solution 1, and it's also 2 for solution 1 and 2 for solution 2. And the factor for the stretch in the y-axis is 4 for solution 1 and 4 for solution 2, right? The main difference that we have here is this 60 degrees and the order, right? So we know how we came about solution 1. So for now, let me try and explain how we get solution 2. So for solution 2, we look at our question, right? But before we go on to answer it, we factor out this part of the question, right? And by that I mean it will be y equal to 4 sine, then we factor half, right? So factoring half there, we get x minus 60, like this. That's what we get after factoring half. And with this now, to get solution 2, using the same logic for solution 1 but from a different starting point, starting with the transformation closest to x, we'll start with this translation by 60 degrees, right, to the right. 60 degrees, it's to the right. 60 degrees to the right, then followed by a stretch in the x-axis by a factor of 2, and lastly a stretch in the y-axis of factor 4, right? So just by looking at these two solutions, I think the best one to consider is solution 2, right? Because it is important to note that when the expression, this one, that is, we can say inside sine x, or the expression in this bracket is not factored, it's quite misleading. As you saw here, you can easily get solution 1, right? So by factoring, right, or rather let me say factoring makes the structure of the transformations transparent, and it allows you to apply the transformations in the correct logical order, right? So go with solution 2. So yeah, whenever you're faced with a similar question, I would suggest that you factor out this part, this bracket first, so that you get a transparent structure of the transformations. Then you go on to answer the question starting with the transformation that is closest to x, right? And I also think that you can go on from here without factoring and say there's been a translation of 30 degrees to the right, a horizontal translation of 30 degrees to the right, and a stretch of factor 2 in the x-axis, and lastly a stretch of factor 4 in the y-axis. And I feel like this is also correct. But the thing is, now for you to come up with this without having to factor out this part of the expression first, I find it a bit tricky, but this is also correct, right? So yeah, like I said before, for this question I go with solution 2 and this one, right? Feel free to share your thoughts and comments or questions in the comment section below and tell me what you think.